Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, I can't project anything yet. Still waiting for the AVU guy to come and help me with the connection. But in today's tutorial, we're basically going to be talking about two dimensional data using a um, 2D array. Okay, so what we did last week, does anyone remember what we did before the recess? Or has everyone forgotten everything we've done before the recess? Anyone? What did we do in our last tutorial? Has the code been done? No, it has not been done. As I said, I'm unable to share my screen at this point in time. We are waiting for the AVU guys to come through and assist us with that. Okay, so anyone, what did we do last time we were here? Yeah. So we tried to handle two-dimensional data using a single variable, which is what's referred to. Hello. Hold that thought. I'll get back to you. I think this is the gentleman I've been waiting for. Good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, just need the converter. Mine is broken.
All right.
So.
I think there's one over here.
I tried poking it with my fingers, but I couldn't get
it. Normally I put it.
Yeah, so if it's there, so what I can do generally, I can
yeah.
kind of take it out from there. So that's the problem.
That's why I normally put it this side. I'm not the only one that works.
That works, yeah. No, I understand. I did have my own, but it broke for some reason.
Yeah. I think I remember
the
white one.
The white one, yeah. So I'm trying to get a new one. So hopefully I should have one soon.
Yeah, but for as long as you need that one.
Yeah, and when I'm done, I just chuck it in there as well. Yeah, that would.
You don't need help with anything else, right?
No, should be all right. I think just need to get PC. Yeah, there we go.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, there we go. There is the code for everyone to see. Oh, I haven't shared my screen with the online people yet. Okay, there we go. So yes, last week, so I'm gonna carry on while this is up here because we have wasted some time. So last week we did try to handle two-dimensional data in a single, so it says I've got low quality on here. Okay, I don't know what's happening. It's flickering online, but I'm just gonna leave it like that until it's done and see what happens. I hope there's no one online that's epileptic. Okay, I'm gonna stop it and try and share it one more time. Let me just reload the page. Okay, good afternoon, online people. I'm going to try and repeat myself throughout this tutorial. I did get started and my mic was muted. I do apologize for that. So basically what I was saying was a tuple from an informatics 1A point of view is two-dimensional data stored in a single variable. So we had last week, we had to add information into the grid that had to do with a certain day, a certain vaccine, and how many people got vaccinated on that day. So our variable was something along the lines of D1V1, which stood for day one vaccine type 1, and how many people got vaccinated with a certain vaccine on a certain day. So the information stored in that variable corresponds to three pieces of information, which is what makes it a tuple. So it's not a data type that's defined in Visual Basic. It is a single variable that stores two-dimensional data. That's essentially what a tuple is. That's what you're being asked to do in your next practical, which is due on Friday, but Friday is a public holiday. So we are contemplating moving the due date to Thursday midnight, or just keeping it on a Friday. And if you want to submit on a Friday, you can. But obviously, there will be no practical session on Friday due to the fact that it is a holiday. But you will get another practical. That's for everyone. You will get another practical either on Thursday. Yeah, no, definitely on Thursday, because I can't release it on Friday because it is a public holiday. Okay, let's get started with today's tutorial. Close this and find the tutorial. So I'm just gonna change last week's tutorial that we did. But again, before I do start changing it, if there are any questions, please do ask those questions. I'll try and answer them to the best of my capabilities. So this is what we did last week, or before we went on recess. We defined all of the variables that we're going to store our two-dimensional data inside. We had day, vaccine, and number to keep track of. We initially allowed the user to say which day, which vaccine, and how many people. So they could randomly choose where in the grid they'd like to input data. We wanted to know what was the total amount of people vaccinated on a certain day. We wanted to know the total of each vaccine over the 4-day period. We wanted to know the average amount of vaccines used each day, the average amount of each vaccine used over all of the days. We wanted to know the the highest, which vaccine was used the most for each day. So we had max for day 1, day 2, day 3, and day 4. So those were the requirements according to the question. Obviously, we were making the requirements up as we were going, but that is what was required of us. We've got a subroutine here to place text into the grid, and we've got a subroutine called fill grid. I made mine take in two parameters or two arguments. I labeled day, vaccine total, average, and all of that. Reset my column width to 120. Over here in my form load, I reset my number of rows to 4 plus 3, 3 plus 4, and then I filled the grid, which is the subroutine over here. Called that subroutine, told it I'm going to have 4 days and 3 vaccines, and that's what it did. From there, we've got input, which day, which vaccine, which number, and depending on which day, which vaccine, then we would put in the number in either D1, V1, or D1, V3, or whatever, one of the above declared variables over here. After setting that variable up, we would display that variable in the corresponding cell in the grid. And again, we just check for day 2. Then in here, we're doing the total. We calculated the total, displayed the total, calculated the total, displayed it. So this is total for days. This is total for vaccines. We didn't do the average. Don't think we had enough time for that. And we did a maximum and displayed that maximum. Are there any questions with this code that we've done in the previous tutorial. Does everyone understand what we were doing? Online people and in class? Yes, no, maybe? Are we all on the same page? Are there any questions? Yeah. Line number? Or should I scroll up indefinitely? Line number 43. 43 is just setting the column width to 120. So I'm saying I want column number 6 to be stretched up to 120. So just making it a bit bigger. Okay, so let's run it and see what it looks like. So here we have it. This is the Tuesday tutorial, right? Yeah, we did this last week. So you see that most used vaccines is a bit bigger than all the other columns. Can you see that? The width is a bit bigger. Yeah. So that is over there. It says column 6. So column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Said column 6 needs to be 150. The reason for that is my label on top did not fit with the original size, so just made it a bit bigger. Something you don't need to do, but it just makes your code look a bit better. Yes. Yes, you can. So same way it's done here. The only issue is you need to specify which column. So you want to do it for all the columns. What control do we have in our arsenal that can loop through stuff? Anyone? I hear mumbles, but no one's confident enough to like raise their hand and give me the answer. For loops. Okay, so if you wanted to do for all of them, we would literally have, let me go. No. One, two, we've got 6 of them. So 1 to 6, right? And inside the for loop, I can then copy this, put it in there and say, which column am I looking for? Column X. Save. Well, no, it won't work. It will work, but one of them will not be stretched. Can everyone see that? Why is there one? Why will there be one of them that's not extended? Because we're starting from 1 to 6, but we need to start. We have an actual column 0. So as you can see, everything is 120 now except for column 0. Column 0 is still set to the original. I think it's 100. So what I did is just added 20 more milli whatevers. I don't know what the actual matrix for sizing is, but yeah, if you wanted to even make them bigger, but notice now that I've made them bigger, my whole form is bigger as well. So I need to change my whole form. Say 0 to 6, and let's say 150. So that would need to be extended a bit. Now it's off my thing, so I don't know what it looks like on the other side, but let's just save it and run it and see. So this is one of those instances where I say a lot of questions we ask you guys that you may think you don't know the answer to. If you literally break it down, so there we go, day 1, all of it is stretched up. 150 is a bit too much, as you can see. So it's one of those things where you just need to play around with it. And the answer that I had come up with is 120. So I'll just keep it at 120, save it. But rather, I still don't want all of them because everything else fits. The only one I do want is just the 6th one. Good. Any other questions? Yeah. So you can do that. The issue with the properties bar is, do you know? So right now, let me just show you what this looks like. Come on. Do we know which column? Can you tell which column you're trying to make bigger here? I don't think I can actually turn that back to what it was. So let me try something quickly. See if I can't get it to work. No. Okay, go, saved it, drag it. So if you had to change it on the properties, do you know how many columns you have? Do you know how big the resize needs to be? No, you don't, right? You can only do that after you've run it. So that's why it's better to have it in the code. But also you have situations where, let's say for some reason, when you try upload your code, your form and your code are separated. I'm sure most of you have had that issue where you try to run it and it says it can't locate the form or whatever. So obviously we're going to cap it at 50. I mean at 40. But there are certain things that we still need to give you marks for. So the resizing of the grid, if I can see it in the code, I can give you the marks for the code. But if you reset it in the properties, can I see it without being able to see the form? No, I won't. So it's a little bit better to just do all of that stuff in the code, where you can actually reference to say, line number so-and-so, I am doing this and that. Yeah.
So setup underscore code read is the same like dot rows dot code. It's hard coded.
No, so set call with can be seen as a subroutine where it just does something. It's not bringing anything back. It does what it needs to do. Yeah. Well, you need to call a certain grid. So in my case, my grid is grdtet underscore, and it's a property. So set call with is a property of the grid. Yeah. So just like the text box, if you say text box dot txt, txt is a property of a text box. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Can you use a loop to compare things? Yes, you can use a loop to compare things. We will look at that a bit later. When you are working with arrays, you can. Okay, yes, you can. Okay. So that's what we're actually going to do. We're going to change all of this to working with arrays, right? So the first thing we're going to do here is private first thing I'm going to do is declare my 2D array, my dynamic 2D array. So I'm calling it dayVaxNum. So should give you an idea of what it's going to store. It's going to store information for the days, for the vaccines, and the number of vaccines that were done on a certain day or for a certain vaccine, right? So this one variable takes over the use of these variables. So we no longer need to declare those, we just declare that one. Okay, and then from there we can still keep, so I'll call them n day, rather n days, n vaccines, and we no longer need to store number. What will we be using number for? Oh, how many people? So all of that is going to be stored in the 2D array. Actually, let me not do that because it makes my code very unhappy. So I'm just going to copy this. Paste it over there and call it ND for number of days, NV for number of vaccines, right? So we need those two variables to resize our. So ND will resize the first dimension, which is days, and then NV will resize the second dimension, which is vaccines. Okay, so we also need a total for days, and can't spell today. Private total.
I'd just like to point out that despite having IntelliSense on, it's not doing, Mr. Libya, anything helpful. So students, at the end of the day, you really want to be a better programmer starting off, you really should be turning the IntelliSense off, because it recommends things that you wouldn't want to use in the first place.
So you've got vaccines total. There is one more thing we need to do that I think I did in the previous tutorial. So what else are we missing? So I've got my two-dimensional array, which covers the top variables, the D1, V1s. I have got my ND, which is number of days, NV, number of vaccines. I've got my day totals, which takes over these variables over here. And I have got my vaccine totals, which takes over these over there. What am I missing? I'm missing I'm missing the averages, right? So would be the same thing here. Wait, actually, these are not doubles. These are integers. That's an integer. That's an integer. Okay, for now, let's leave it. Let's forget the averages and the min and max for now and just focus on those. Do you see how many variables we have now compared to how many variables we had before? It's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variables for all of these plus all of these. So already we're working kind of smarter. Okay, are there any questions with those variables I've declared right now? Is there anyone who does not understand why any of them exist? Yes. 4 days and 3 vaccines, yes. No, we do not. If we actually know how many days, we don't have to. So in this case, we can literally just say 4 days and 3 vaccines. So days total has to be 4, vaccine total has to be 3. But what's the issue with that? What did you say the issue with this approach is? Can anyone else use this program? If, for instance, another varsity is doing a vaccine drive, and they've seen the wonderful work you've done for UJ by helping them do this program, and they asked you to do a program for them as well, right? So you need to duplicate this thing, ask them how many days and how many vaccines. And if they don't know, that's an issue. So by creating it as a dynamic program, we are allowing any input to go in there. We are basically making it in such a way that it can work for more than just one scenario. Okay, that's what we're doing. The reason why, and the actual question we had from last block was the varsity wants to keep track of the vaccine days and vaccine types, but they don't know how many days or how many times, right? The reason why we made it 3 and 4 is because with single variables, is it possible to create variables when you don't know how many you need? No, it's not. And that's one of the reasons why arrays are a little bit better than single variables, because with single variables, I need to know how many variables I need to create. But with a dynamic array, I can just put it there, ask the user, how many do you want? Do you see the supremacy, so to speak, of arrays? Okay. Besides the fact that already from a gajillion variables, we're only down to 5. Yeah. Questions? Okay, so let's move on. Let's work with the information we have. So I'm going to make it dynamic once more. And I'm guessing at this point, we all understand why it is dynamic. The original question asked us to do it dynamically because we did not know how many days and vaccines they were. And already my full grid subroutine was kind of dynamic already because it took in the number of days, the number of vaccines. So when I call it, where did I call it? Oh, I called it in the form load over there. I gave it 4 and 3. So I can basically just change the information that's there. My rows and columns as well need to change. Can I still keep all of these 3 lines of code in my form load? Let's go back. What was the reason for me resizing my grid and labeling my grid in the form load? Anyone remember? Okay, does anyone have an idea why we would put this information in the form load? The user wasn't involved. I got a online answer that says the user wasn't involved. Do you agree? Yes. Okay, so the answer in class is because I already knew the number of days and a number of vaccines. So both of you are correct. I had this information, which is why I could put it in the form load. Can I still put it in the form load now? No, I can't. And what is the reason behind not being able to put them in the form load now? Yeah. Yeah, it does. So let me save it and let's run it and see. You'll see what happens. So at the moment, it's still geared at 4 and 3. So when I run it, it still says vaccine type 1, 2, 3, and day 1 to 4. But those are not that's not the information we need. So we need to have a button where users will be able to initialize the program, right? So that being said, go to our form. You need a new button. It's gonna drag everything down. No. Create a new button, make my form a bit bigger, my grid a bit bigger to accommodate for the new button. And my new button, properties. Initialize, the name of the button will be btn init, save, and let's double click on initialize. It's gonna pop up in the middle of nowhere. It's gonna take it out of there and put it underneath my form load. So my form load, right underneath my form load. I'm going to copy the information out of the form load, put it in that button. But the information we have in that button is not the right information. So get rid of my form load because I'm not using it anymore. What is the first thing we need to know in order to resize our grid, in order to label our grid? Yeah. How many vaccines? Okay. What else? How many days, right? Those are the 2 things we need to know before resizing everything. So the first thing I'll do is I have got a variable for that. I've got a variable called ND, which will equal to ND is equal to an input box, and the input box says how many days is the vaccine dry? Obviously, the red little squiggly line is because input boxes are string, and my ND is a integer, so convert to integer. And we're all happy. Now I know how many days they are, right? Second thing I need to know is how many vaccines are there? Okay, so already, maybe some of you are thinking this. The example you have in your slides uses text boxes. I use input boxes. And that's just a preference thing. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. The only place you can't use text boxes is if you're working in a while loop or a for loop, for instance. But besides that, you are allowed to use text boxes if you prefer text boxes. I personally prefer input boxes. Prof. Lung prefers text boxes. So any example you see that has text boxes most likely was written by Prof. Lung. Anyone that does not have text boxes was most probably written by me. Okay, just a preference thing. And also in your test and exams, we know who you like more, depending on how you're answering the question. Okay, so now we've got those two pieces of information. We know how many days the vaccine drive is going to be. We know how many vaccines are going to be used. Okay, so for resizing the rows, if the question did say your rows are your days, we are going to substitute that 4 with ND. We're still keeping that plus 3 for whatever reason, because we still have all of those things we need to fill in that we filled in previously, right? If the vaccines are columns, then we have number of vaccines plus 4. Can you see that I'm not actually doing much? I'm just changing the code we've already had, putting in these pieces of information. So where we have 4, we have number of days, and where we have 3, we have number of vaccines. So let's see if that works. Save it, run it. So here it is, running, initialize, how many days? Previously we had 4 days, right? Let's run it with the same information and see if the layout still looks the same. 4, how many vaccines? 3. So over there, we've got day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, still works. We've got vaccine 1 all the way till vaccine 3, day total, day average, most used vaccine. Everything is still the same. Let's try a different one and say 2 days, 3 vaccines, 2 days, 3 vaccines, still works. What is the issue if I say 4 days and 4 vaccines? Is there an issue with 4 days, 4 vaccines? No, there isn't, right? But when you test your code, please don't test it with the same number. You know why I say that? Let's go back to our code. So let's say for some reason I did this. Is that correct? Line 63. It's not correct, right? Does everyone see that it's not correct? Because it says ND, ND. So both my rows, so when I'm calling fill grid over here, fill grid wants day and vaccine. So I'm basically saying 4 days, 4 vaccines. Is that correct? No, it's not. Is this a mistake you are likely to make? Yes, no, maybe? Yes, it is. It's a mistake you are likely to make because we've got so many variables all up in the air. If you do something like this and you save it, mind you, what we did there is wrong, right? If I run my code and I say I would like 2 days and 2 vaccines. Okay, in this case, it does actually warn you to say, hey, there's something dodgy going on. But it still works because the vaccines and the days still correlate. Can you see that? The only time you'll see that it has an issue is if I say 2 and 3 for argument's sake. Now you can see I said 2 and 3. 2 days, cool. 2 days are there. 3 vaccines, I only have 2 vaccines. Do you see that there's an issue? So whenever you are testing out code, especially with 2 dimensions, don't test it out with the same dimension because there might be a situation where you've copied or you've used the wrong variable. And if you're using the same number, it doesn't matter. It won't matter. And you're going to come out of the exam hall thinking, I did very well, only for us to come and test your program with 3 and 2 and it crashes. And what happens when your exam paper crashes? It gets kept at 40%. Is this the first time you're hearing this? Okay, yes, gets kept at 40%. So we only mark the code. So something as simple as this could cost you not just your distinction, but could cost you the passing of the paper. Okay, so always test it with different values. That way you'll see if you have these types of issues. I'll show you more examples as we go if we do have enough time. Number of vaccines. Cool. So we have reset our grid. We have reset our, we have filled our grid. One thing we need to do now is resize our arrays, right? So you can do this in a subroutine. You can do this in a button. So in my sake, because everything else here is kind of like in a subroutine. Okay, let me just create another subroutine. So I'll say private sub grid resize, pass nothing in it, end sub. And we have posted last year's semester test too. And you'll see in the mark allocation, there is use of a subroutine or use of a function. So you just need to create at least one in order to get those marks. Don't make everything a subroutine, but also you should have a good amount. So in here, what am I resizing? Got what is my 2D array called? It's got a weird name, so I'm just going to copy that name and paste it in there. And we've got, what is the first dimension? Days, right? So I'll say NV. Second dimension, vaccines, NV. And we've got freedom, is the first one. Second one is day totals. Day totals is to the number of days, ND. Freedom. Third one is vaccine totals. Vaccine totals to the number of vaccines. Oh, and then I'm gonna call it grid resize. That's wrong. Array resize. Good. Needs to make some sense. And there we go. So in this one button, I'm getting the number of days, I'm getting the number of vaccines. I am resizing my grid. I am populating my grid, and I'm resizing the arrays. It sounds like a lot for one button to do, right? But is it okay? Is this button doing all 5 of those things? Yes, no, maybe. What is this button actually doing? It's initializing, yes. But what are we, of those things that I mentioned, what is this button responsible for doing? This button basically takes in, gets the number of days and gets the number of vaccines and resizes the grid. That's all the button is doing. Everything else is done in subroutines. So this is acceptable. You can have one button doing multiple things as long as those things are done by other things like functions and subroutines. So in this case, this is okay. Let's not necessarily check if it's working because I can't see if my arrays are resized or not. So that's one of the downsides, because resize array, there's no way of actually seeing if my arrays have been resized until I start trying to put information in them. Good. Yes. No, it wouldn't be a problem. Wouldn't be a problem. But the rule of thumb is have each thing do one thing. So in this case, if you look at my 2 subroutines, right? Array resize, what does it do? Does it do anything else? No, it doesn't. Okay. Fill grid, what does it do? It labels my grid, does nothing else. Okay. So that's what you should strive to do. Obviously, resizing your arrays is not a big thing in terms of operations. But what we're trying to avoid is having one button input information. After inputting information, calculate a total, calculate an average, calculate a min and max. That wouldn't be ideal. That button is doing far too many things. Yeah, but as far as just initialization stuff, you can have all of this in one button. It's really not an issue. But as I'm saying, with certain marks, I might say effective use of a subroutine or effective use of subroutines. That means if it says subroutines, you need to have at least more than one. Then this is the easiest way to get those marks out of the way. So if we're looking at a rubric type of thing, as far as the subroutines part is concerned, I've done what I need to do. I no longer actually need to have any other subroutines. I'm cool as far as that's concerned. Okay, that's the thing I was trying to go for here. Questions with my initialization button? None. Okay, so let's go into input. And yeah, all of this has to go. So I'm just gonna no, it's one too many. Comment all of that out. So in my input button, what do I need to do? I need to start populating the days and vaccine information. Again, depending on how you want to start, it's entirely up to you. You can start with the vaccines, you can start with the days. But seeing as my grid, the way I've chosen to go about it is row, then column, I'd like to start with row first. Does that make sense? Again, preference, purely preference, but the question might ask you to do it in a certain way. So you need to be able to do both. So in this case, I have a for loop. So I'm going to say for D as integer. No. All right, this is one example why IntelliSense is not good for you. 1 to ND. Next D. Okay, we are filling in the two-dimensional array. First part of the array is days, which is why I started with days. Again, preference. Second part of it is vaccines. So and you'll notice the name of my variables is D and V. At this point, we know what D and V stand for. D represents days, V represents vaccines. So that's why I've got for D as integer 1 to ND. And again, one of the other preferences is both of these are local variables. So if you look at your slides, what happens in your slides, the code in your slides would typically have dim, D, and T as integer, right? And then the for loop would not have as integer, would just use D. That's a preference again. Profluent prefers to declare her variables first, then use them. I like declaring them as I'm using them. Preference, there is no right or wrong way of doing it. You can use both if you want to. Okay, so what are we trying to do in here? I keep on forgetting the name of my array because it's a very odd name. So I'm just going to go back up and so here's the array. Where do I want to put this information? I want to put it in row D, column V. At this point, what is row D, column V? 1 and 1, right? 1 and 1 is equal to, convert to integer, input box, I don't know if everyone can see that. So in my input box will say, how many people got vaccinated on day D? In this case, D is 1. So it will say, how many people got vaccinated on day 1 using vaccine type 1, right? And then whatever information I get, I'm going to store it in that same place. So what else do I want to do to see if this is working? I want to try and display this as well. So my display code would be place text. And where am I trying to place the text? What row am I trying to place this text in? Row D. What column am I trying to place this text in? V. What am I trying to display? What I've just put in my two-dimensional array. Obviously convert to string. There you go. And all of these, and remember, we were not done with this. We had just done 2 days. We still had to do day 3, day 4, right? So all of that code is replaced by 6 lines of code. So let's run it and see what happens. So just rule of thumb, when you are testing out things with two-dimensional arrays, please don't test it out with like 10 and 20 because no one has that time to fill out all of that information. So the best dimensions to use is 3 and 2. It's the easiest one. So initialize how many days? Got 3 days. How many vaccines? 2 vaccines. Okay. What is happening here? Specified column. Okay. At this point, I don't know what's wrong, but I know there's something wrong. So let's go back up there and see what issue do we have. Day is fine. Vaccine plus 3. Oh, no, but vaccine is plus 4. So that should be okay. So whatever's complaining is, no, not that. Whatever's complaining is in full grid, but I think I fixed it. ND, NV. Line 52. Well, this is still correct. Oh, yes, you are right. This is the issue. Anyone else picked it up? Okay, at least you guys are honest about it. Yeah, I don't know what. Okay, that would be 6 would be this, right? Let's see if that works. Yeah, the issue was my column width because I said column 6, and if I said 3 and 2, there was no column 6 anymore. Let's see if that has solved my issue. Initialize how many days? 3 days, 2 vaccines, and there we go. Now it works. So let's do input. So my input says, how many people got vaccinated on day 1 using vaccine type 1? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it insists on being over the grid. But there you can see it said, started with day 1, so day 1 vaccine 1, day 1 vaccine 2, day 2 vaccine 1, day 2 vaccine 2, day 3 vaccine 1, day 3 vaccine 2. So I filled out all of that information with that little bit of code. Questions? This should have, I'm expecting some questions here. Yes. 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 Okay, if we want to do that, then we go back to this. Simply put. But it's not going to be as much code either. So all we need is we need to know. So let's say we said after this person has done this, they need to be allowed to edit or add more information, right? For that, I was actually not prepared to do that. But okay, let's see. For that, I need put a new button here at the bottom, stretch this up. Again. And properties, let's call this text. Edit, the name of the button would be ETN. Edit, cool. Double click on it. It's coming up here. I can put it way at the bottom because it's at the bottom. Right, way at the bottom, the information I want is just these three. Put it at the bottom, put those three there. I need to know what day, I need to know which vaccine, and I need to know what the new number is, right? Once I have those three, without having to do any data checking, without having to check if the information given to me is correct, I could simply just say a vac number. What is the row? What is the first dimension? Days, right? First dimension would be, come on, day. Second dimension would be vaccine. Third dimension, there is no third dimension, sorry. Vaccine is equal to number. Or if this is an addition, if I say I want to add to the information that's already there, it would be plus equal number, right? The only thing I would need to do now is place text. Again, it's still day, vaccine, and the text is the new value I have now gotten, or added and convert to string that value. So let's there is so enabled, make it false, right? Make it not enabled. This is just a trick I like doing. And then only after I've added the information there, now I can edit. So btn edit dot enable is equal to true. Let's see if that works. There we go. The reason I made it not accessible is, can we edit when there's nothing there? Ideally, no, we can't edit any information if there's nothing there. So initialize, I want 2 days, 3 vaccines. Input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. Then edit. Which day do you want to edit? Day 1. Which vaccine do you want to edit? 2. How many more people do you want to add? 2. So we are adding vaccine 1, day 2, right? Over there. Up to 4. So the only thing you need is to know which row, which column. Or rather, in the grid, what dimension this way, what dimension that way. Once you have those two, you can just append whatever variable, whatever value you want to append. So if we had to take it a step further to verify, I would say check if day is less than or equal to 1, and if day is bigger or equal to 1, or if day is less than or equal to number of days. That's where you're making sure that whatever day the person gives you is within the bounds of your day. To avoid something like this, if I said day 6, it crashes because there is no 6 in my, it says index out of range because there is no 6 in my 2-dimensional array. Okay. Questions? There's an online question. What is the function in line 83? Okay, 83. 83 is just enabling the button. So I set the button property to false, and then I'm just enabling it. If you don't get it, don't worry about it. This is one of those things where it's not worth marks. It's really not worth marks. It's just an aesthetic thing. Good. Questions with input? So everyone gets this. It took me at least 2 weeks in undergrad to get this. Okay, I guess you all are smarter than I am. So let's carry on. The next thing would be calculating totals then, in that case, because we do have a total calculator. I don't need this code anymore. I'm just going to get rid of it because it's just taking up a whole lot of space. I haven't deleted the variables up there because we're still using them. We still need them to run the code. So in order to get the total number of days, what is days? It's rows, right? Days corresponds to rows, corresponds to the first dimension of our 2D array. You'll only be able to click edit button after there are inputs from the user already. Yes, that's the logic behind that. So days, I would say for loop for D as integer equal 1 to number of days. Next day. Okay, so in order to get the total for the days, what are we adding up? In order to get a total for the days, what are we adding up? Yes. The columns. What's in the columns? Vaccines, right? So we still need to go through the vaccines. So we've got 4, oh my goodness, for why? For V as integer equal 1 to number of vaccines. Next V. Okay, first thing we're going to do, we need to initialize our total to 0. So where are we initializing our total to 0? Whenever you are working with 2 for loops or more than 1 for loop, you always put information where it is relevant and not where it is not relevant. So let me give you an example. If I said, I hate not knowing what my variables are called. I called it day totals. So if I said day totals at D is equal to 0, right? And then I went on to add information to day total and said day I really hate IntelliSense. E plus equals the information in and let's display it. What row are we displaying the total in? So it's total for days. So remember, our days are our rows. So which row are we displaying the total? Each and every row for each and every day, right? So the row would be row D. The column would be number of vaccines plus 1. I'm just taking a guess here. I think, yeah, it is. The last one after that is total, right? Yeah, total. And we're going to display convert string. That's not supposed to be T, it's supposed to be V. Okay, with that code, I can assure you that all of those lines of code are correct. Nothing wrong with that code. The order is wrong. So let's see if that makes sense, or actually that turns out to be true. If I drag this, initialize 2 and 3, input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Totals 0 and 0, and it says you tried to specify row 5, but there are only 5 rows. Okay, that's something I was not looking to get, but there's an error there, twice. Is that total correct? No. Why is it not correct? What's the issue? So this is the part where you guys need to read your code. Yes. Uh-huh. So the previous total is discarded every time the loop runs over. Okay. Does my day totals equal to 0 have anything to do with my V loop? Does it have any reference to V? No, it doesn't. Should that line be inside the V loop? No, it shouldn't. So whenever you're a bit confused as to where information goes, look at what it's concerned with. So in line 90, the only variable I'm using is D, right? Am I using V at all? No, I'm not. So it has no business being inside the V loop because it has nothing to do with V. So ideally, this needs to be moved out and put over there. Does that make sense? So let's try it again. We're most probably still going to have an error, I'm anticipating. So let's see. Initialize 2, 3. Input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yay. Total still says 0. And there's a complaint there. What am I doing wrong? Yes. Line number, let me just stop this from running and comment that out. So line number 89 is supposed to be on 87, okay? So you say I must move this out and put it here. So we've got a red little squiggly line there under D. Does D exist in line 88? No, it doesn't. So I can't put that line of code there. If I hover over D, it says D is not declared. It may be inaccessible due to its protection level. So it's basically telling you, I tried looking for D. There is no D. That variable does not exist. Does not have access to that variable. Okay, but we'd have to set our total. Because we are using B, it needs to be within the D for loop. Yes. You think? D must be equal to 1. Okay, so if I am setting up a total, where do I want to start off? Do I want to start off at 0 or do I want to start off at 1? Where do you ideally want to start? Do you want to start off with an empty canvas or do you want to start off with something already existing in there? Something that already exists. No, you want to start off by 0, right? You want to start off with nothing from scratch because your answer is going to be incorrect if you start off with values that are pre-existing. So the equal to 0 is not necessarily an issue. Anyone else? Yes.
I think the issue is on late test, NV plus 1.
Okay, you think the issue is here at NV plus 1. Okay, so what must I do with that? Let's say NV. Yes. So let's run it and look at what we're talking about. So let's, because I'm not going to press the button now, just so that your explanation makes more sense. Let me take that code a little up. Yeah, everyone can still see that. So initialize, let's say 2 and 3. Right? So there, we've got 3, yes. So NV is 3. Yes. Okay, so what is the value of NV? What is the value of NV? Okay. Okay, so what you're saying is over here we've got NV is 3, right? So we start at 1, 2, 3. Start at 0. 0, 1, 2, 3. So this should be 4. Is that what you're saying? No, let's go back. You actually could have a point. What is NV? Number of vaccines, which is 3. Okay. So when you start counting, not from a grids point of view, when we start counting, where do we start? Let's try NV plus 2. Okay, let's see. The question is, my issue with that is why? That's what I want you to get to. The explanation is more important in this instance than it actually working. Because I don't want you to get to a point where you kind of know that this is what you need to do in order for it to work, but you don't know why it's the case. So let's see. Drag it over, initialize 2, 3. Input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Totals. Is that what we wanted? No. It's a day average. So what we do want is, this is what I like doing. I like putting a breakpoint because none of us seem to know what's happening. So let's see what the code is doing, right? Start. Initialize, we'll say 2 and 3 again. Input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Totals. So at totals, we've got into. So D is 1. So the first total is 0. Input D is still 1. There should be a, no, not you. I actually forget what it's called. I think it's called, no. Yeah, there you go. This is what I'm looking for. So at this point, we know day totals length is 3. So we've got 3 days. Day vax number is 12. So that's 3 times 2 because it's 2 dimensions. It has a length of 12. And we've got D is equal to 1. Number of vaccines is equal to 3. V is equal to 1. So at this point, let's see. NV is equal to 3. So 4 and 5, that's why it's 1 further than what we want it to be. And now, okay, this is just displaying, gets to that, it's fine. Next one. When we get to the next one, day totals. Day total length is equal to, there should be more information. Let me open that. So the 0th element has 0, the first element has 1, second element has 0 at the moment. Let me pin it down and skip over it. Okay. Or I went too far. Yeah, I went too far. Let me just run it again. for the second one. So it's, how many vaccines did we say we have? 3, right? Okay, so this is 1, 2, 3. So let's look at day totals here. So the first one is 0, fine. The first one is 6. That was the right one we wanted to calculate. Then we've got 15. So our calculations are right. The issue is where we're displaying them. So at this point, we've got NV, which is 3 plus 2. And what we are displaying there is day total at D. So day total at D should be, D is what's keeping track, so it should be 6 and 15. So at 0, we're not doing anything with the element 0. We never do anything with the element 0 in informatics 1. So we keep it like that. And continue. So we still have, we're getting the right results, but it's in the wrong place. So let's see if just making it +1 will solve the issue. I'll keep that breakpoint there for now. And I will initialize 2 and 3, input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Totals, let me just say continue to see what it does. It works. So what issue did we have? Why did we have zeros? Anyone? Okay. Let's look at the code again. Let me remove the breakpoint, but breakpoints do actually help out in most cases. I guess previously my computer just didn't like the code. No. Don't do that. Save everything and let's go back at this code. Are there any questions with this? Because we are calculating the total of days, we need to set the days to 0. So for each and every day, we're going to set the total to 0. And then we're going to start calculating. So if I had to comment this, would be now. Okay, so I can actually get rid of this. Questions? No questions. Yes.
So if we were to give out the variables, in the sense of this is an experiment, that's collection, which one will be the independent variables?
If you had to make it variables, so which one would be dependent and which one would be independent? I'd say in this case, both of them are for the total, the independent one would be the days because the days don't, okay, I've actually never thought about it like that. I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't, from the top of my head, I can't actually compute that.
My question was directed because we are necessarily forced for the V to be inside of the D.
For the
V to be inside of the
V is inside of D because what we are calculating is the total for the days, right? So for day 1, how many vaccines were used in day one? So we need to say, in day one, how many of vaccine type 1 were used? How many of vaccine type 2 were used? How many of vaccine type 3 were used? Add them all up, and we know how many vaccines in total were used on day one. That's what we're trying to do. That's why I said it's a little bit easier to look at it from a grid perspective. And that's where your design comes in. Before you even start coding, if you can visualize your grid, so let's go back to 2 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? If I'm saying I want the total for day one, see where day one is over here? If I want the total for day one will go here. Do we all get that that's where day one's total will go? And that's because I'm adding 1, 3, 2, and 3. Put them over there. So I'm adding vaccine 1, vaccine 2, vaccine 3, all for day one. Then I'm adding vaccine 1, vaccine 2, vaccine 3, all for day 2. That's why the day total will be here and there. But if it was vice versa, if I was calculating how the total number of vaccines used, then it would be vaccine type 1 on day 1 and then vaccine type 1 on day 2. We're just interested in knowing overall how many type vaccine 1s were used. So we have to add up all of the days. Then therefore, D would be inside V. Okay, which is, I think that's the next total we have to calculate, because this is just VT and calculates both totals. So let's look at the second total. So we would have for V, integer equal 1 to number of vaccines, next vaccine. And we will have vaccine totals at V is equal to 0. We'll have for D as integer equal 1 to number of days. We'll have next E. Precisely. And we're going to do the same thing we did above. So vaccine totals at V is equal to vaccine totals at V plus day vacnum, which column is day, and then second one is V. And we are going to display that, so place text. What row? Which row? Are we displaying the total for the vaccines? The last row, right? So it would be number of days plus 1. Which column? Each and every vaccine has its own total, so the column needs to change. So if the column needs to change, the column is going to be V, because V changes all the time. What variable do we want to display? We want to display that total. Save. Literally the same code as above, we just switch them around. You'll notice that on top, the one that was stationary was the column, because we kept the column at NB plus 1. The one that changed was the rows. In the second one, the one that's stationary is the row. The one that changes is the column. Okay, let's run it. And it usually helps to run the same test data once you've established some level of test data. So minus 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One of the reasons it's useful to use the same test data, one of the reasons why you need to have test data in your design, is chances are your next button might break your previous button. Is everyone behind that concept? The code that I write in my following button could change the code in the previous button, or could alter something in there. If I'm testing my code out with different test data every time, is it going to be easy to see that the code that I had previously thought was correct is now wrong? No. But if you use the same test data, I know that I'm expecting 1, 2, 3 4, 5, 6. If I put anything else and I click a button and it changes, then I know that something has changed. Okay, so let's do totals. There I have 5, 4 plus 1 is 5, 2 plus 5 is 7, 3 plus 6 is 9. They are my total. So the bottom I've got total for vaccines, which adds up all of the rows. I've got my total for days, which adds up all the columns. Questions? It's either you guys are very good at absorbing stuff or I'm very horrible at lecturing. Is everyone getting this? Who isn't getting this? What if the user enters negative numbers? That's entirely up to the user. So input -1, -9. It's really not going to change much. The totals will still be the same. There we have -8 as the total. We have 2 as the total. It's a non-issue. You can still do it. No questions. Okay, let's go to average. That should be a pretty easy button to work with. Average, actually I could include average in here because I've already done the total, but I do have an entire button for it. So I guess I'll just do an average. Average is, I don't have a, no. So for the averages, I still need the same for loops. So I'm just gonna copy that, put it in there, which is why I'm saying the average could ideally be in the same thing. I don't need the innermost one anymore because I'm not calculating anything. I don't need V anymore because I'm not calculating anything. I don't need that. Okay, actually, I just need the for loop. So average. So in this case, if we're going with setting everything to 0, if that's the spirit we're going with, we'll have come on. A AVG at E is equal to 0. Right? Leave it at that. And then AVG is equal to day totals at day D divided by how many days do we have? Number of days. Oh, it's complaining because I didn't, these are integers. This should be double. Okay, so what's wrong with this code? Is there anything wrong with the code? I guess we'll run it and find out. We're almost running out of time. Let me display it. How did I display the one on top? It was the row is day. The column is stagnant, so it's number of vaccines plus 2, because the one above is number of vaccines plus 1. And let's display the average. Convert to string. Let's see if that works. Does anyone have any issues with this code? I don't know at this point if you guys are actually paying attention or not, but let's see. 2, 3. Input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've tested that, we know it works. Totals, average. It broke. It says null reference exception, object reference not set to an instance of an object. All I'm going to say is we wrote this code together. That's all I'm going to say. What is the issue? Yes. Why am I? We're initializing it to 0. Okay, screw that. Let's get rid of that. Two, 3. Input 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Totals, average. System null reference exception, object reference not set to an instance of an object. Have you guys not run into that error before? Never. You guys are great coders. If you've never ran into this error before. Okay, I've got someone online that says, I don't think the arrays have been redimmed. Do these arrays have sizes? Do they have sizes? Someone said yes. Do these two arrays, these that I just created now, do they have sizes? No, they don't. Can I put information in an array that does not have a size? No. What needs to happen? Need to resize them. We haven't done that. So let's go to our resize and read a average to number of days, resize vaccine average to number of vaccines. So this was an example of when you're doing things like this, when you keep on adding and adding and adding, do everything all at one time so that you don't have these type of errors creep up. And how does this happen? How does this type of coding happen? It happens when you don't have a design. It happens when you don't have a plan of saying, this is what I'm going to do, then that, then that. You're just going by question, right? I went with input, totals, averages. And then when I got to averages, I realized I'm missing a few variables. And I created those variables. I'm expecting them to run because everything else is running. And this is the part in the exam where you raise your hand and you go, sir, Visual Studio is broken. And I look at it and I'm like, so you've never seen this error before? And you go, no, this never happens at home. I've never seen this error before on my computer. So it needs to be the lab computers. And it's something very simple as this. How many of you don't know how to resize arrays? Show of hands. Okay, how many of you figured out that we did not resize these arrays? I'll take your word for it because you didn't raise your hand and I asked what was the issue. But do you see the point? The solution to this error is something we are all aware of. We know how to solve. Yeah, I think we're out of time. No, out of time. Definitely out of time. So we'll finish this next week. No, we still have 3 minutes. But yes, we'll finish this next week. And we'll stop right here and I'll do the averages with you guys next week. Your practical for next week is going to be on 2D arrays. So basically, it's going to be the same question as practical 7, just with arrays. Should be easier to do. Okay, online people, do you have any questions before I disconnect? Okay, no questions. Please do enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I'll see you guys tomorrow.